We'll get started. Thank you for your patience as we work through some technical issues. We're committed tonight. The technical issues related to our ongoing efforts to try and provide access for this project to those who are watching from home. And so we have the partnership, and thank you to WCTV, who's recording this forum tonight, as well as streaming it for those that are not here in person. And thank you for all of those of you that have taken the time out of your evening to come out. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Glenn Brand, and I have the privilege and pleasure to serve as the superintendent of the Wilmington Public Schools, and also the chair of the Wildwood Building School Committee. This is an important forum as we continue to move forward with the project. The goal of tonight for this, our sixth public forum for this project since this project began a number of years ago, is to continue to provide an opportunity to update members of the community on this important and really exciting project for the future of elementary education in the district. Our goal tonight is to tackle a number of different areas relative to the project. Approximately 20-25 minutes or so in presentation, and then most certainly the opportunity to open it up to questions from those that are here or those that who are joining virtually from home. So with that, let's begin. The agenda tonight is on your screen. There are a number of different elements, if you will, to this project that are taking shape, and I certainly recognize that many of you may have or are following closely along with this project. Some of you may be just entering into this for the first time. So we want to try and strike the balance of hitting that and recognizing where people's understanding is of the project. We'll start with introductions in just a few moments. There's an awful lot of people that you can see who are connected to this project and who have been for some time. I want to talk a little bit more about the MSBA process. MSBA is a term you'll hear many times over. That's the acronym that stands for the Massachusetts School Building Authority, MSBA. There is a sort of start of the large level, the large picture, 20,000-foot view of this project, and then dig deeper as we go through the slides and material tonight. You'll learn a little bit more about the schematic design and an important update that our project team has been working on. That also very closely aligns with the educational program. The most important driving force, of course, of a new school building is what is planned to support teaching and learning within the walls of the school. You'll have an insight in terms of the cost update as this project takes shape, and the ongoing efforts around community outreach and how you can stay connected to the project as we move forward. We'll first start with introductions, and if you could, Ronnie, if you could kindly go to the next slide. So a project as large as this, as you can imagine, takes an awful lot of hands on deck and a lot of people to help make this possible. And we want to take a few moments to introduce these folks to you. There are a number of partners that the town has enlisted and has officially partnered with to work on a project, and that would have been very similar to the high school project, the last major building project here in the district and in the town. We have three. You can see their labels here, but I want to take a moment to offer them a chance to introduce themselves to you, starting first with the OPM, or the Owner's Project Manager, SMMA. Julie?
My name is Julie LeDuc. I'm the Director of OPM Services for SMMA.
Thanks, Julie. Also, the designer, the architect is here, and that's Dorr and Whittier. They are a returning face to the community. Some of you may know them well. They worked with the town and partnered on the high school project, where you're sitting in right now. With that, Lee.
Good evening. I'm Lee Dorr with Dorr and Whittier Architects.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ronnie Phillip, Project Manager with Dorr and Whittier Architects. And we do have Bryce Taft here. He's also with Dorr and Whittier.
Thank you. And then thirdly, the construction manager at risk, or CM at risk, is a new partner to this project, recently brought on. But with that, I'll welcome Fontaine and them to provide introductions.
Thanks, Fred. I'm Mark Abdella. I'm the Vice President of Construction Management for Fontaine Brothers. We're a Massachusetts-based company that specializes in school construction. We've been on board about a month or so now, and we're having a great time getting to know the project, getting to know the community. And with me tonight is
Rob Day with Fontaine. I'll be the project executive. I've worked a lot with Lee in the past successfully, and Julie with SMMA, so excited to have another one and be part of the community here in Wilmington.
Chad Lequier with Fontaine, project manager. I've been with Fontaine for about 4 years. Excited about the project.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, folks, and thank you all for being here tonight and your partnership on on behalf of this project. So the other really important entity is the School Building Committee, many of whom are around the table immediately right now, some perhaps in the audience, but they'll join. But certainly the community, and from my perspective, owes a huge debt of gratitude to these folks. This project started originally just coming out of COVID, and it has been a long journey with an official application in 2021 to the MSBA, and here we are in 2025. Many of these individuals have been with this project team since the very beginning, but they are a very important, they play a very important role in this project and really serve as the authority, the body with authority and decision-making on the project. I won't read all of their names, you can see them here, but what I think is important to point out is there is representation on the building committee from really multiple stakeholder groups. That includes parent guardians, that includes Wilmington Public Schools staff, and our elected governing officials, as well as the town manager's office and the superintendent's office. And so really, well, a large committee, stakeholder representation from really multiple and important groups in the community. I believe that this tonight will be our 15th meeting of the building committee since the summer of 2024. Countless meetings since this project began back in 2021. And so thank you to them for their countless hours of time on behalf of our community, our staff, our students, and families. The MSBA process and schedule, we'll dig just a little bit deeper into it. There's an awful lot, as I've come to learn, to this project. But the MSBA, to start with, is really an important body because it is the only grant funding program available in the state of Massachusetts to help communities offset construction costs for new school buildings, renovation, repair, or new school construction. But with that, it has a lot of regulations, requirements, timelines, and such that a project like this has to follow. And we are doing just that. And so we want to dig a little bit deeper into that in just a minute to give you a little bit of insight around what the scope and timeline is. You might be saying, well, wait, you started in 2021, it's 2025, as you'll soon learn. We've still got a few years to go before this, with the successful support of the town in the fall, will open its doors to students and staff. But there's a lot of work that has to be attended to. But first, a glimpse back and how we've gotten here. And again, I know many know this, but I think it's an important opportunity for those that may be just trying to get caught up. Where did this come from? Why are we here? And why is this even of consideration for the community of Wilmington? For those of you that don't know, we have 6 elementary schools. 5 are currently operating and physically open to students and staff every single day. Where did the 6th one go? That was the Wildwood, and that closed its doors a number of years back, of which we certainly won't get into unless there are questions now. But so we have 6 elementary schools in the district, and what is true is that all were built in the 50s or 60s. And with the exception of general repairs or replacements for envelope issues, boilers and such, those are all still, all 6 schools are still in their same state. There have not been any large-scale renovations to those facilities. The town has certainly worked hard to attend to such things as HVAC and plumbing and so on, but there's no question that they're aged facilities. Wildwood was determined, as mentioned, the most need of the 6 district elementary schools, and that's why when we put forth these applications to the MSBA, through consultation with the town, we decided that the Wildwood was the priority project because of its respective needs, not just its age, but also its needs as well. Through the process, there's a very refined sort of regulatory, if you will, back and forth process that the MSBA takes when working with communities like ours in this kind of project. And they take a very, very close look at enrollment, which makes a whole lot of sense. Can't enter a project and start to talk about renovating a new school facility or building a new school facility unless there's collective agreement around what the enrollment is projected to be for that school facility. With a lot of back and forth exchange of data and taking a look at our projections as a town and as a community, to make a long story short, where we landed with, when I say we, the town of Wilmington and the MSBA is reflected on the screen here. And if this project had just moved forward with a pre-K to K school, the enrollment that was locked in or collectively agreed to was 130 plus students. The 130 is the kindergarten enrollment. And the plus is the pre-kindergarten. The pre-kindergarten can change from year to year based upon a number of factors, and so that's why we had locked in that in quite the same way as the K. We also, though, upon application to the MSBA, were very clear that we were interested in considering other possible combinations of schools coming together, consolidation as it's known. And we also made it clear that we were interested in exploring pre-K to third grade, which would bring together the Wildwood and the Woburn Street School, and you see the enrollment that is on file with the MSBA. There was a collective agreement to land at 510 students plus the pre-K. And finally, the third rendition of consideration, if you will, was taking a look at the pre-K to fifth grade, bringing together the Wildwood, the Woburn Street, and the North with an enrollment of 755 students plus. These are numbers that are on file with the MSBA, and that's how these buildings are taking shape. So if folks ask, well, so where do those numbers come from? It was a very sort of methodical look at our forward-thinking view of what the enrollment looked like right now and what that's projected to look like going forward. There is, as I mentioned, a lot to the process that MSBA expects communities such as ours to follow and carefully align with. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ronnie, who's going to go a little bit deeper into what this looks like.
Thank you, Dr. Brand. And for those who haven't been following along on the project, we're going to give a brief history just so everyone understands how we got here. But the MSBA process, it's divided into 8 modules. As you can see, as Dr. Brand discussed earlier, first you're invited into the eligibility period. You start defining the project team. You hire an OPM. You hire the designer. And then once the designer is brought on board, you have the start of the feasibility study. That's when we do a lot of background information. We'll get to that in a few slides. And then where we are currently today, which is schematic design. And then once we get through schematic design, we go through the different processes, which I'll get into a little bit, but, it started with looking at the existing conditions, looking at the educational concerns, and then creating what's required for space in any future project and how it matches up to the guidelines that's set by the Massachusetts School Building Authority. And then we move into another phase where we come up with concepts, and then we go into a phase of refining those concepts and then eventually getting to one concept. Once we get to that one concept, which happened in October of 2024, we then moved into schematic design, which is where we are today, and that is developing the one preferred concept with more detail and more accurate pricing to move forward to vote on. And that vote would happen by the MSBA in June and then also by the town in September. So I'll invite the town manager to talk to you about kind of the big picture for the town.
Sure. One of the things that was apparent when I came on board in the middle of this process was that one of the questions that the members of the committee were getting and that we were fielding on a regular basis was, does the town have a plan for how to deal with all 6 of the elementary schools? As you can see from the slide that's showing, the town has a traditional geographic divide between its schools, between the west and the north, and the solution that was ultimately chosen as the preferred option was a pre-K through 5 to deal with the 3 schools on the north side. So that pre-K through 5 was the preferred option, was voted on by the committee, and that's what we're moving forward with the MSBA through the schematic design and through the funding section, which is the next module. However, there is a real and valid question about what next, because we all know that we have 3 elementary schools on the west side of town that were still built in the 50s and 60s that are not getting any younger. The proposal that I have kind of laid out, the plan, so to speak, for how to handle that, specifically deals with the town's ability, I believe, to move forward with another project that mirrors this project on the other side of town in the mid-2030s without the need for a debt exclusion. The reason why that's possible is because, as folks may be aware, there's a statute in Massachusetts that requires towns to pay down their pension liability. The Middlesex Retirement, which that Wilmington is a part of, has a plan to have that paid down by 2036. And the town's payments in 2036 are probably going to be $12 to $13 million. So right now, we'll be making a payment in 2036 of $12 to $13 million to pension, and the next year, we will not be required to make that payment. So we have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to take an excess in funding that we had allocated to pension relief and move that towards a capital project. If we go through the process that's been laid out before us for this project, the goal would be to occupy this school in the 28, 29 timeframe. And then, as folks have seen from kind of the timing of this project, if in the early 2030s we turn around and apply to MSBA again and get lucky enough to get accepted, by the mid-2030s we're going to be at the point we are now, ready to step forward and make a funding determination about that new school. Because we have this one-time opportunity, we will be able to build that school without a separate debt exclusion or an override. And that's not something that most towns can do. So if we do kind of put forward this as our plan, the idea is to have another identical, pre-K through 5 project that captures the same students, the same cadre of students that we're capturing in the North and the West in about a decade.
So let's talk about the project need. In the first phase, we talked about in the feasibility study, we evaluated the existing school facilities and the sites that are part of this project. That's the Wildwood Early Childhood Center site, the Woburn Street Elementary School site, and then the North Intermediate School site. The buildings are all of similar vintage, and they have similar issues. Maintenance is staggered over the years, so some components have been replaced and some are scheduled to replace. These pictures that you're seeing are some of the images of things that the team noted going through. It included issues with site circulation, separation of buses and vehicles, for example, different drainage issues on sites, building envelopes needing upgrades, better insulation, doors, windows, exterior walls, the roofs. Several accessibility issues at the schools that are multi-story. They don't have an elevator. Ascending to the second story is an issue for kids with mobility issues, and so often they're moved to the schools at Shawsheen or the other schools that did have accessibility. So they weren't staying with their cohorts. Just in general, outdated interior finishes. And then MEP equipment. Again, that's, an ongoing basis of maintenance, but, older ventilators, antiquated systems that, it's hard to get parts for. So these were all different things that we started to see as we were reviewing the 3 different buildings. We also studied the educational side and noticed you'll see the list obviously here, so I won't go through all of them. But some of the challenges that we did see was that, at the end of the day, the district is supporting a wide range of students, and they all have multiple needs. And part of that, one of the challenges we saw were the multiple transitions between the elementary schools. Especially at a young age, we see that continuity, that relationship, that community that gets built, it happens over several years. And here they were having to transition, and that's not easy for every student. There was also the differentiated instructional needs and having a need for either dedicated spaces or classrooms for specialists to be able to work with students. The science and computer spaces, there was no designated STEM lab, for example. having workspaces for service providers. Some of them are, converting closets into workspaces. Then you had limited time and space for staff collaboration. Often there's one shared conference room at a building, and there's several different meetings happening during the day, and trying to find spaces to provide confidential meetings, but then also having other meetings at the same time. So trying to schedule those is always a challenge when there's not more than one or two spaces to really work around. And then as mentioned, accessibility throughout the buildings. That was a big one, to try to keep students with their cohorts. So in summary, the facilities, they are maintained and they're operational, but it's inevitable that infrastructural upgrades are going to be required at some point. But without a major project to be able to meet current codes, that's not to say that they don't meet the codes that they were built at, but if you are to do a project, you would have to come up to the current codes, and that would require a major project. But ideally, that's what would be needed here in Wilmington to also be able to address the educational vision. So the next step then was for us to define the project needs through a series of 8 visioning sessions. Those were participated by about 50 people, and they represented the district, they represented the community, the administrators, the staff, representatives, seniors, parents, and students, which was fantastic to have their feedback as well. We developed a summary of spaces for the proposed projects that would meet both the building and the educational needs for each of the enrollments that were discussed earlier. And then we identified and explored 18 options on 4 different sites. We then went and reviewed those into a short list of 9 options on 3 different sites. And then those were further developed, further evaluated, and eventually a consolidated pre-K-5 option located at the North Intermediate site was the preferred grade configuration and an option to move forward into schematic design. So we've been busy since October. We've been developing the design, and you see some of the images here on the boards. We're going to be putting some of those up here for you as well. So the design team, we worked on a site plan based on feedback from this committee, the SBC. There was a site and landscape working group, which was a subset of the committee, but also involved DPW and meetings with the athletic director, recreational department, just to understand all the different needs that we needed to consider with the consolidation project. We also met with the police and fire departments to understand any safety concerns. And also, we've had a meeting with the immediate abutters. So this is the site plan that we currently have proposed. Right now, this has about 193 parking spaces that would be provided on site. And then like I said, we've been refining the plan. So we've worked to improve the buffers at the property lines with different berms and screening to help provide that barrier, if you will, between the neighboring properties and the property of the school site. We've looked at relocating. There's this turnaround here. It used to be west of the existing building, or the proposed building. And after hearing some feedback, we located this turnaround so it's a little further north, a little bit further away from some of the properties. We've looked at improving some of the distances of the different amenities on site, so the playgrounds and some of the other features. Part of the relocation of the playgrounds involved this playground here. There's 3 playgrounds that are proposed just because of the number of students that are on site. So this one that you're seeing here in the middle, this is for your upper elementary students, so grades 3, 4, and 5. And they're located close to a U8 field, and there's also a basketball court. And then you have the proposed building, and you have 2 additional playgrounds, one specifically for pre-K students, and then the other one would be for students in grades K, 1, and 2. As you can see here, this is your property, your parking, and it's right along the streets of Ballardvale and Salem Street. And your existing building would be located right here, just to orient you on this site. If you end up looking at this board, you'll see there's a light outline of the existing building, just so you can help place yourself where the existing building is, and then where the proposed building is, which is set behind. We also did test fit some additional sports fields, basketball courts, just to see if they would fit. And, you know, at the end of the day, we're continuing to look at this. We're going to be continuing to work with all of the stakeholders to continue to improve this as we get into the next phase. One thing that we'll highlight is when we were in the process of looking at the site, we initially proposed that the vehicles would come off of Salem Street and drop off students at the main entrance, and then buses would enter the site off of Ballardvale Street, and they would use the road just north of the building to be able to turn around and then drop off students closer to the cafeteria space. And then after hearing a lot of the feedback, we actually swapped that because having the vehicles come off of Ballardvale would actually more than double the queuing length for pickup. And our goal here is to take as many cars off of the road and onto the site to reduce any impact to these two roads that are well-traveled, and also for the folks that are living on those roads as well, to not be stuck in traffic. So right now, this would proposes over 80 vehicles that would be able to come right off of the road. And we're working with the CARES program and the district to fully understand the impact of the CARES program, because we do have numbers for potential queuing, but that's really the worst case scenario on 3 days. CARES is offered all the other days that school is open, and it's a very active program. It's widely used, and it actually has a substantial impact on how many cars would be queuing. And so we're pretty close to where we need to be, and we're going to continue to work on that. So for the floor plans, the shape is relatively similar to what we proposed previously. I'm actually going to skip over to the next slide here. The blue areas that you see are what we consider the public areas, and then the salmon or pink color is the more private areas. And so in the public areas, think main entry, cafeteria space. So here is your main entry, your cafeteria space. The 12,000 square foot gymnasium is central to the building. You have administration, the nurse, and then you have some of the additional spaces, back of house spaces, kitchen. And then on the second floor, you would have the library and some additional classrooms, the STEM classroom, a flex classroom, and then some additional office spaces. This then is secure from the private spaces. So you have security thresholds wherever you see the blue meet the pink. And the pink is where you have your classroom spaces and your extended learning areas, and we'll see some imagery to help describe some of those spaces better. 3-story academic wing, which is the pink, and then 2-story public wing. So now we'll take you through some of the imagery to help you see what we've been developing in the last few months. So the proposed pre-K-5 school, it's a foundation of education and community. It's providing a structured environment where students gain knowledge, develop skills, and build meaningful relationships. The site design plays a crucial role in ensuring safety by designing secure, accessible, and well-organized environments for students, staff, and visitors. The thoughtful layouts with clear sight lines, controlled entry points, and emergency preparedness feature enhanced security and supervision. And we've done our best to seamlessly integrate into the fabric of the community. It reflects the character, the values, and the needs. Throughout the design, it complements the surrounding environment. It fosters a sense of belonging and connection. Here you can see the playground area, and you see the building behind. You see some of the sports fields. And one of the features I did not mention earlier, but when we moved that playground into the center, it actually allows the students to access those playgrounds without ever crossing the road. So now all 3 playgrounds are connected without crossing of any roads or parking lots. All of the playgrounds have crash-rated secure fencing around it for protection and security. And here you have the building. When we think about the building, we thought about durability, longevity in mind for, as we would hope for any building that we put into Wilmington. And we thought about the quality of products that we're proposing, and that they have a lasting performance. The material selections will minimize maintenance needs while withstanding demands of time, climate, and daily use. Prioritizing sustainability and structural integrity, the building remains a reliable and enduring asset for generations to come for Wilmington. Beyond the classroom, the school serves as community hubs. It's hosting events, supporting families, and encouraging civic engagement. This is a view towards the cafeteria entrance, and the main entrance is here. Outdoor classrooms and play areas, they foster growth through diverse learning opportunities while promoting social development, inclusivity, and teamwork. By nurturing a culture of collaboration, respect, and lifelong learning, schools can empower students to thrive and contribute positively to society. This is an image of the school entry. It serves as a welcoming gateway that sets the tone for a positive and inclusive learning environment. A school cafeteria, it's more than just a place to eat. It fosters education and community by promoting social interaction, inclusivity, and healthy habits. Here you can see the connection of the stage. It's actually set to open both on the side of the cafeteria as well as the gymnasium. The cafeteria space, it's also an informal learning space where kids develop their communication skills and a sense of belonging. It's a gathering space for the assemblies and performances as well. The school gymnasium, it's a vital space that supports the education community by promoting physical health, teamwork, school spirit, and developing all the skills that students are going to need, like motor skills and discipline. Beyond sports, the high school-sized gymnasium will serve as a gathering space for the community as well, and fosters a sense of belonging both in the school and broader community. The school library, it's the cornerstone of education and in the community, providing a dynamic space for learning, exploration, and collaboration. Oops. Sorry, I went too quick. Sorry. This is an image of the school classroom, part of learning in the school. I'm going to go through these a little quick just because of the time. This is the preschool and kindergarten extended learning area. These are extensions of the classroom, so they're centered, and all the classrooms are off of this space. And it helps to support early education and also fosters curiosity, social development, and foundational learning. These spaces are defined to be indoor play spaces as well when there's inclement weather for especially these younger grade levels. Kids get to explore, play, and just build all of those essential skills that they'll need at that young age, you know, communication, problem solving, creativity. As we get into the second level, that's grades 1 and 2, you know, the kids start to create more interactive activities, start group experiences with their peers. Another space, they'll have some of that softer seating, but also some of the structured seating that you'll see. You know, but at the end of the day, a lot of these spaces are about building community. It's a place of gathering for those grade levels. We also have some of these more, I keep referring to them as the nooks, but this one is a smaller space for considering all of the different needs of the different students. So some of the spaces are more open and others are smaller. This is one of the ones proposed at the upper level. You'll see multiple heights of the seating, different types of seating, and this is just one of the areas that are distributed on the third level. On the third level, there's 3 academic grades, so grades 3, 4, and 5. No, that's quick. So we're going to take you through just a quick cost overview. So when we first did our estimate, there was 3 estimates that we've done so far for this project. The very early phase when we were, you know, very, very high level, and now we're starting to drill in. So the first phase, preliminary design program, the project, the estimated construction cost range, so this is just the cost of the building. It's not, it does not include what we refer to as the soft costs. Those are the different owner costs, such as the designer fees, contingencies,
Furnishings.
thank you, furnishings and technology. Those are outside of the construction cost budget. And we've been putting those together. They'll be presented later tonight at the SBC. But for the construction cost range, when we were at the preliminary design program, it was $149 million to $165 million range. That was around $936 per square foot. When we got to the next phase, the preferred schematic, that number came down a little bit as we started to get a little bit more refined. So it was $136 million to $150 million range, and that cost per square foot was about $878 per square foot. And now in schematic design, and then this is, you'll see it's no longer a range, it's a number, because this is the number that you will be voting on for a project to move forward. The range, or the dollar amount is $137,743,666. As you can see, that number has continued to come down as we've continued to refine the project. And then the cost per square foot is $835 per square foot. So good news, we are on budget. And so you may be wondering, well, how does this compare to other projects? How do we understand what this cost per square foot is? So MSBA, they put together data for all of the projects that they are investing in. And as you can see, the cost ranges are anywhere from $673 to $907 per square foot for similar elementary projects that are currently in the MSBA pipeline, if you will. And these are all, they were around the same phase that we are. And so that average is $827 per square foot, and Wilmington is at $835 per square foot. So we are right in the range of where we want to be. The boxes that you see are projects that are in schematic design. The crosses are projects that were in the preferred schematic phase, which was our previous phase. And the light blue cross is where the project was at the previous phase, and then the star is where we are now. Michael, do you want to touch base on the community outreach that's been happening?
How much? We get a lot of time.
Yep, you get one side.
Right. So last summer, as we were going down from the many to the few, and then the few to the one of the groups was to put together a PR committee trying to get facts from the project out in front of the community, get feedback. As we've noted here, we've had a couple inserts in water bills. We've had, obviously, these community forums as part of that approach. Last year at the Fun on the 4th, we had a booth. We had quite a few people come. I think we had a couple hundred people who took a survey. That helped educate us last summer and into the fall. We made our decision. And I think we're going to be doing some of that same outreach moving forward. We're going to be again this year at Fun on the 4th to get more feedback about and project facts out about this particular option. There's new updated message boards around the town that Dora and Whittier have helped produce, and I think Fontaine's going to help moving forward. So we're looking to make sure that public places in town have all updated information that we keep informing the public.
Thank you. And we just invite everyone to stay connected. That's the best thing yet that you could do, is learn about the project, share information about the project, no matter how you feel about it. It's important to know the facts, understand the information, and we're working with the district to make sure that the website is updated. And so there is a website or a link that's right on the district website. And so you can gain a lot of access to any of the previous information, presentations, minutes from the different meetings. And then also WCTV has partnered to be sharing all of these, streaming these online as well. So that's another way to stay informed. And Email is always an option, so if you have any questions about the project, you can always submit them by email, and we're using those questions to help provide responses on the FAQ. So that you can also find on the website as well.
Thanks, Ronnie. Just before we open it up to questions, 4 years ago, you look back to the calendar, it's almost 4 years ago to the month that this community was invited into the MSBA, and it is not lost upon many of us that since then we have probably, I don't know, had 40 or 50 meetings. My point, though, in raising that is we have worked very hard to try and make sure that all of the information that has been discussed and decided upon and presented through those meetings is available to those that are interested. There's a lot, if you're just tuning in for the first time now, to go back and to take a look, but it's there, and I just bring to your attention that it is off the district website, in which we have recordings of, I think, every single meeting, and a whole lot of literature and presentations, if you're interested to try and go back a little bit in time. But this is not meant to just have been a passive exchange of information, and through these forums in particular, I should also point out, all of the building committee meetings are always open to the public, and we always have the opportunity for members of the community to share their thoughts and ideas through public comment. But that said, we're here tonight for a community forum to specifically try and bring a whole lot of information to you, but also for members of the committee who are here tonight to welcome the chance for those here to ask questions. If you are planning to ask a question, we would invite you to do so just for the benefit of the recording. The best way to do that is through the microphone that's right in the middle of the room here. And so if you have a question you'd like to know a little bit more about, we'll do our best to answer here tonight. And we'd welcome at this time to open it up for those that are interested. Please.
Just one before we jump into the Q&A. I just wanted to stress that the numbers that we showed tonight, right, again, that's construction cost only. We'll be coming out very shortly with the total project cost estimate. Typically, it's about 20% more on top of the construction cost, but there's some factors we have to work through with the town, thinking about contingencies, what the market looks like today, all the discussion going on nationally with tariffs and things, to be able to make sure we position the project in a good place. So stay tuned, we'll be back soon with the total estimated project cost. And ultimately, what everyone's really interested in is what is the local share and MSBA participation. That board meeting is happening on June 25th. And on June 25th, at the end of that board meeting, we'll know exactly the final cost that MSBA will be putting towards this project, and we'll also be able to start calculating out tax impacts at that point. So.
Thanks, Lee. All right. So with that, if folks have who are here tonight have questions, please feel free to come forward. We have about 15 people who are online. The same invitation is extended to them as well, too, if there's a question that somebody who's joining virtually would like to ask tonight.
Jen Benelli, 17 Jacob Street. So I had the opportunity to participate in some of the new school tours in October, as well as been tracking the recurring meetings of this committee. So I had two questions about the design related to the windows. One is, will the windows open? Because I understand from an HVAC perspective, that's superior, right, to climate control. However, it does raise some questions if you think about COVID virus or safety concerns and being able to exit the building that I would love to hear more about. And then on that topic of safety, when we toured the schools, we talked about the glass in these newer schools relative to our 1950s elementary schools. They are bullet slowing or have greater bullet resistance to deal with the safety concerns of this day and age. And would you be able to speak to kind of when that might come into play as well?
Sure. Regarding the operation of the windows, the bottom of the window is operational right now. They're hopper windows. They're not intended for egress. That was something that we did talk to when we had our kind of security safety meetings. So it is something that we're going to continue to look at. There is obviously concerns, well, I guess on the first floor, you could egress out of them. So part of that is understanding what the safety plan is for this building. but also the HVAC factor is definitely a consideration as well. And so that's something from an operational standpoint and, policies with the staff of, are they supposed to be opening those windows unless it was an emergency, something like that. So those are things that we'll continue to work on and develop through the design, but currently the bottom half of the windows are operational. And on the first floor, we have accounted for some
School guard.
Thank you, school guard glazing. And so that is to have added protection, especially at like the main entry, the areas that are typically targeted, which is the main entry by the administration, because that's kind of the first line of defense, if you will, where people are coming in. But we also have an entry sequence that we plan as well, as with a project like this to help with that safety feature. It's, you have to get buzzed into the building to begin with. From there, you're in the vestibule, and there is a transaction window with administration, which you wouldn't even have to open. You can be able to just speak to. And then from there, if you're needing to still continue further into the building, then you could either go into administration or you would go further into the building, but you would have to be buzzed in as well. So a lot of these features are built into the design as well. But we've also talked about having the specialty glazing that's also on the first floor, so that's part of the project, and we'll continue to develop, the needs of that as we move forward.
I'll just add, the security design of this building has been paramount on our design, so we've been talking about this really from where we started placing the building on the site and taking into account the principles of sight lines coming into the site, making it compact, sight lines within the building down through corridors. We've reviewed the project in its current form with the district security consultant. We have our own security consultant on the design team. We've also reviewed it with police and fire, and we're going to continue to do that as the project evolves. There's other things that are kind of built in that we really don't talk about in public forums, but rest assured, through either passive design, physical hardening of structures and entrances and technology, it's been a really high priority for the building committee and certainly for the design team to be able to react to that. So thank you for the question.
Thank you. Other questions tonight?
Sorry if no one else had one. I had one more quick follow-up. Actually on a different topic. One is, again, having followed this for the, I guess for the community, I think you guys are not doing yourself justice. I mean, I've been watching those committee meetings and hearing about, we're negotiating with the MSBA. Can they cover more than their fair share? More than we initially assumed, or, they had an opening offer. We came back and said, we think you should cover this. And so it seems, like you have a little bit more line of sight on, is the MSBA coverage going to be better, the same? It sounds like better or the same from those meetings, and well in advance of July, which is really quite late. I know that you kind of narrowing your pencil and your pen on the design and the overall project costs, but can't we get a little bit of that narrowing from all that great work that you all have been doing?
I think we'll eventually have, and eventually I mean in the very near future, right, a pretty good estimate of what we think. And I'll just really be clear about the fact that we will not know the final answer until June 25th when they have their board meeting. And a lot of it doesn't have to do with our understanding of what the project costs are. It's MSBA's interpretation of where spending caps are. Throughout the whole project, there's different levels of caps, how much they're willing to spend on site work, how much they're willing to contribute to furnishings and equipment. Certain caps, and because they're trying to fund projects all over the Commonwealth and disperse that money in a fair and equitable way. So we take our best attempts at understanding how they're going to interpret those. We also have some ineligible spaces. We talked about the gymnasium, and we oversized that for community use, right? And we knew that's ineligible. So we have to go through those conversations, and that's what this schematic design phase is. Between now and like 3 weeks when we submit our final package to them, we'll be working with their staff ahead of that board meeting to kind of finalize all of those lots of details on their reimbursement side of things, so that we can come out definitively and say they're ready to sign a contract, which they will be on June 25th, pending local approvals at town vote, to be able to commit to that funding percentage.
Thanks, Lee. Sir.
Yes, Christopher Vietoro. I have a question. I liked what I've heard about safety and the kind of thoughtfulness of the design, trying to think about, how things work, how to improve education. One of the things that I kind of struggle with a little bit, though, is I have a child of my own, and one thing that I really focus on is how do we bring independence? How do we make him more self-reliant? We do have, this is a pre-K to 5th, and, I would like, at some point, my child, maybe 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, to be able to walk to school. A lot of what I'm seeing is a heavy attention on busing, heavy attention on cars, but what about, kids who walk to school, who live in the surrounding areas that can walk to school, that can bike to school? Are there bike racks? Are there ways for them not to have to cross so many parking lots? We know that parking lots are actually a very dangerous place to be if you're a small child and people are in a hurry. So I just want to hear a little bit more about other ways of getting into the school property that are not car related, that are not this heavy related. I see that there's a possible way from the other side of the community where it could be people crossing, and leave it closed for cars, but so, I kind of want to hear a little bit more about being able to walk, bike to school, as well as how do we, there's a lot of parking spaces, 193 parking spaces. Even if there was a teacher or an administrator for every 7 kids, that still is almost double what that would require. The current parking setup would be twice so that's a lot of parking. How can we start thinking about, is that absolutely positively necessary? I know there's certain minimums that are required that are, I would say, are a little too high for what we actually need, where most of those parking spaces would be empty. That's still space that we need to maintain. That's still space that we need to take care of. That's still space that we need to plow. So it isn't just empty free space. So is that number for parking spaces the absolute minimum? Can we reclaim some of those spaces on the side so there could be more, open space for kids, so that there is a place in this entire structure where they don't have to cross a street, they don't have to go through the parking lots. So, other ways of getting into the school, and also our parking spaces, can we reclaim some of that space for more outdoor spaces? Because right now they're kind of stuck in this moat, surrounded by this moat of parking and cars.
Just before I have Ronnie or Lee speak to that, if I can, it's sort of a broad maybe point just to make, and in there I think you touched upon a few things. That we obviously have these folks who are partnering with the town and the community on this project, and we have a cross-section of people who are part of the building committee. But what I think it's important to share is throughout the process, and this certainly applies for probably about the last year, there has been an awful lot of engagement with our Wilmington educators and staff within and through the 3 schools in particular that this is focused on. So it's not exactly to some of your points or questions, but just for those that are watching, if you're wondering, is this just the committee or is this just our designers sort of development of what this building should look like, how it should be shaped, how many people will work there? In fact, there's been an awful lot of engagement of educators in all 3 schools. Our school leaders are a part of this committee, our principals as well. So I would want folks who are tuning in, just in case you're wondering about that, there has been an awful lot of leaning on what's currently practice and approach in the Woburn Street or the North or the Wildwood, and how does that take shape as the foundation for what this school will be, including such things as how many staff do we have in place. But I know there were some other points, maybe Lee or Ronnie, you might want to talk to.
Well, thank you for your question. So I'll answer the first one about pedestrians or students walking to school. So from Arlene Drive, that sidewalk that's there will be maintained, and there will be an opening in the fence for any students that are walking from that neighborhood. There are sidewalks along, I know it's harder to sometimes see on these site plans at this scale, but we have from both Ballardvale and from Salem Street, there are sidewalks that connect from wherever you connect to the sidewalk directly to the school. Once you access the site, there's maybe one crosswalk that you might have to cross over just from the circulation that's required on site. What you see here for circulation provides emergency access around the entire building, and that's why you have a road around the building. But we have incorporated sidewalks for pedestrians, and also just to be able to use as walking paths during the day with students on site. And then there would definitely be bike racks as well, so that's also planned for, and those would likely be located by the main entry. Regarding the parking, so by the bylaws for Wilmington, the parking is actually determined by the assembly spaces of the building. And so as we are going into design and going into permitting, we will be continuing to look at that. But the gymnasium being the size that it is, it technically can hold over 1,000 people. And so, the parking then becomes based on that. The school requirement is about 140 spaces that we established for this enrollment to allow for all of the staff that's needed on site, as well as some additional vehicles if there are visitors. But the upper number here, like when we say that right now we're showing 193, that really is coming more from the bylaws. And so we'll continue to visit that. But, it's not an area where there's a lot of street parking, because if there was an event, there would be an issue of parking and safety from that standpoint. So, it's both factors that contribute to the parking numbers.
I just to add that your question to the point of pedestrian access, I think is really important in the fact that you are trying to make this as an elementary school as open as it can to the community. One of the factors is off-site, and not so much at the entrance of the school. I think we've done a pretty good job of taking circulation from anyone coming off the street or Arlene Ave and being able to have a safe sidewalk access all the way to the front entrance, right, with a crosswalk that's guarded at each of those entrances. It becomes a little bit more difficult, and one of the things that we kind of understood with going through the traffic study is there's some pre-existing conditions that need to get looked at, both from traffic circulation offsite, and the town is working towards that in tandem with the development of this project, as well as kind of safe access ways offsite to the school. So part of what we're going to be doing after the votes in September is furthering our work on both the traffic study and understanding that a little bit further, and any potential impacts we could do at intersections to improve traffic, but also looking at sidewalks off-site, where crosswalks are located, sight lines leading to intersections. So these are all things that we're trying to understand more, to your point, because I think that is crucial, right, is investing in the community, trying to get as much pedestrian access as we can. We certainly do try and limit the amount of parking, that we provide on things, but there's some things that kind of work cross purposes against each other, whether it's just the school needs and event sizes and current bylaws. So this is where we are today, right? And I keep talking to the building committee about, this is representative, what we've talked about here tonight, about 10 to 12% of our design effort. The rest will be done, after a successful vote. There's much more work for us to do kind of on refining these things and taking into account some of these things that we can do potentially off-site to improve safety for pedestrian access.
Thanks, Lee. Just before we go to an in-person question, anyone remote with a question at all? No? Okay.
And just a follow-up question with that, I still think it's really, I know that there's some certain requirements that we need to address, but it also, we induce that demand. If we allow for 80 cars to get in there, we induce people to drive their kids because it's a little faster, it's a little more convenient. We don't have to wait for a cold bus stop. Like, there's also a lot of that. The more we make it more convenient to drive, the more people will drive. The more will then 88 spots won't be enough. So I also think that we create the mess that we are trying to avoid by trying to avoid it. So how do we balance those needs? Yes, there's going to be some growing pains regardless of what we create, because there's going to be new traffic flows, new things. But if we adapt it to be primarily based, like I hope that these crosswalks are raised crosswalks, for example. I know that maybe some first responders might balk at that because they're raised sidewalks, those are essentially bumps, but that's there's still other cars. There's not, I mean, hopefully we're not having an emergency there every month that we're gonna be worried about this, that, you know, most of the time it's gonna be kids crossing. So how do we, you know, really focus, like what I see there is over 60% of the space dedicated for cars. And, you know, they're dedicated for not the children that are gonna be walking in, walking out, playing around, you know, running through the moat around this school. So I would also like to, you know, have that considered, that let's not create the mess that we're going to have to be cleaning up in the future. And also, you know, if we do a car-centric approach, we're going to have a car-centric problem. So how do we also kind of create a little bit more of what we want to see, not the kind of the mess that we're trying to avoid. So how do we do the positives, not just avoid the negatives?
Thank you. I'll just before the next question, I know that we're a little bit after 7. We got a late start, obviously, with some technical issues, so maybe around 10 more minutes or so, if we can, for some more questions. We do have a full building committee meeting after our forum this evening, but next question.
Good evening, Kevin McDonald. I have a few comments. Before I make those, I'd just like to ask a few questions. How much money has been spent up until now, roughly, on this endeavor?
Mr. Slagle, would you?
So the town voted to appropriate $1.2 million towards the feasibility study that includes everything through schematic design. That is partially reimbursable by the MSBA, and that, you know, so by the end of schematic design, the $1.2 million will be spent.
Thank you.
And if the town does not vote to have an override, which is necessary for the school, does the MSBA still reimburse the town?
So just to be clear, that we would not be asking for an override. What we'd be asking for is a debt exclusion. Those are two different things. An override is a permanent increase in taxes, and a debt exclusion is a temporary increase in taxes that goes away as the debt gets paid off. If for some reason the town voted to not fund the debt exclusion, that would not impact our agreement with MSBA for the feasibility study money. However, obviously, there would be ramifications of it, but we already have a contract with MSBA for the $1.2 million. It's already been appropriated.
And that temporary debt exclusion, how many years would you figure that would be? Would that be like 35 years or?
So the last time we put forward numbers to the community, we were basing it on a 30-year debt exclusion. Okay.
So I just want to make a few comments. 30 years, temporary sounds nice, but when you look at it for 30 years, it's a significant amount of time. We still have ongoing debt for the high school, for the public safety building. The town hall school administration went out for bonding. And there's other things that are going on in town, like they want to buy the Sharapa farm. I noticed that when you advertise this meeting, you're still calling yourselves the Wildwood School Building Committee, and this has like nothing to do with the Wildwood in my estimation. When you had that special town meeting at the Shriners, you were looking for a place for pre-kindergarten, early education, and I just feel as though it's the type of thing that was a bait and switch. Get people all excited for that, and then now you're hitting us up for like potential $250 million school. We were told when they built the high school, which was $85 million, that your taxes were only going to go up the cost of a cup of coffee a day, and people's taxes doubled. So if people's taxes doubled with an $85 million school, just think about what they're going to do with a $250 million school. Other things that I've come across is talking to people that work in the north, people that maintain that building, and they say it's one of our best buildings in our whole town. It's built like a fortress. It's not built like the middle school with drywall where people can punch their fist through it. It's a solid school. Where you're looking to build that school, I don't know if you realize this, but it's filled land. It's a very high water table there. There's some talk out there that there's buried hides and contamination from the old tannery. To spend $1.2 million on a feasibility study for a location that I think is the wrong location, and to knock down a school that has had multiple millions of dollars put into it with windows, roof, kitchen, paving, other things, it just seems like extraordinarily foolish. It seems like a great disrespect for the people in Wilmington, and a real problematic issue with people and their taxes and oppressing people. I don't know if any of you have ever taken the time to look at the Lowell Registry of Deeds to actually see how many people, after they built the high school and their taxes doubled, actually moved out of town. But it's in the hundreds. And I just don't think that the people of Wilmington, who are all emotional and excited, thinking that this new building is going to provide a wonderful education for their students, they're going to be very disappointed, because what you're doing is you're taking your money and investing it in a building, knocking down a structurally sound building, instead of taking that money and recruiting the best teachers in this area. And I stood before the Board of Selectmen, and I told them a story back in 1980.
Mr. McDonald, could you just wrap it up?
Yeah,
Because
I'm
I just
wrapping it up,
I want
wrapping it
to
up.
give other people an opportunity.
Yeah, gonna put a bow on it. 1980, there was a teacher that got voted Teacher of the Year. The next year, that guy was gone. And the reason why he was gone is because he didn't have teacher tenure, and Proposition 2.5 came in. So he got canned. A guy that was voted Teacher of the Year. You can't let this stuff happen, folks. This is something that we really need to think twice about. And the fact that they're looking to buy the Sharapa property, and there's other opportunities that could come up where we could build like a supermodel school and get more reimbursement. But frankly, I'm opposed to this. I don't like the way that you guys presented it as far as the bait and switch aspect, and you know, to try to like sugarcoat it and call it a temporary debt exclusion when it's for 30 years. That's a long time, piling more debt onto the debt that we already have. Thank you very much.
Any other questions this evening? Sure.
I'm sorry, could I just want to, there's some misinformation that came out there. I just want to be real clear. So at no time has the school budget been proposed at $250 million. As you can see from the slides that were shown earlier, the construction cost right now is at $137 million, and the total costs, even at the last kind of evaluation we were doing, were around $186 million. So I just wanted that to be very clear, because there's some.
Thank you, Mr.
And I just want to be clear that nobody knows what's in the ground there, so that 130 million could double.
Dr. Brent, just to be clear, at the meeting at the Shriners, the concept of school consolidation was presented then. It is not new. It's been part of the project from the very first application. So for clarity's sake, it has always been on the table. It's always been an option, and it was determined to be the preferred option.
Thanks, Mr. Turner.
Just real quick, Lily Maselli, 25 North Street. I just wanted to, if you guys can, I know the answer to this, but if you could clarify why it is still called the Wildwood School Building. Second, I think you're all doing a great job. I love that you've already made the changes from the community outreach last time, from what the abutters said, the abutters meeting, I should say. And frankly, in my opinion, I think we already have the top teachers in town. So thank you.
Thank you. Sure. The question around the Wildwood and why the project, I mentioned earlier that when we submitted 6 statement of interests, they're called, to the MSBA. And basically, it's an application to say to the MSBA, hey, we're a community that we know that we have some capital needs to improve our schools. So we're putting forth applications for all 6 elementary schools. The select board and the school committee both voted to authorize myself as the superintendent in collaboration with the then town manager Hull to submit those applications. Thank you, Mr. Turner. The clarity is indeed the case that the article for that special town meeting at the Shriners did very clearly indicate that we were exploring school consolidation as part of the project. We had to identify one project of the 6 applications as our priority project, and that was, as mentioned, the Wildwood. And so since that point in time, this project is, as I understand it, officially on file with the MSBA as the Wildwood project, and hence why we continue to use that naming today. So thank you. Sir, maybe 2 more questions if we can, being at 7:18, but thank you.
Questions, I'll be quick.
Thank you.
Eric, do I need to do the disclosure thing? No, okay. My name's Anthony Nelson. I live on Saranoa Lane. 2 points of interest. One, possibly for the Fontaine folks. I saw the $836-ish per square foot estimate, which when doing a quick Google search, numbers from 2023 was between 500 to 700. I assume that that's inflation. Things are not getting cheaper. Do you folks do any kind of forecasting? If we were to say not vote for this project, what it would cost in 5-10 years? I would be interested to see that data if it exists. I don't need it today. So that would be one question. And then the other question is, again, some quick searching. Typically, the average school, public school in the United States is replaced every 49 years. Obviously, many of ours are well beyond that. I'm curious, because there is no real local data on that, if any of that data exists, are we behind other towns and cities around the greater Boston area? I think that those points of data would be very helpful in making this decision, so thank you for that.
Thank you for those questions. So response now, or sorry, yeah.
Yeah, a couple of thoughts. I'm sorry, I missed your first name again. Anthony, great questions. So if you look back to what the high school cost 15 years ago as a cost per square foot, I believe the slide that we showed in the last couple of meetings is somewhere in the neighborhood of $354 a square foot, maybe 15 years ago. So you can sort of see the curve. So if you were looking at numbers even 2 years ago, and you plot that curve, Ronnie showed currently a snapshot of, say, the last 18 months and how this project is right in the average of other elementary schools that are currently being designed and planned to be built on the same schedule. So it gives you a sense of what's happening around the Commonwealth for schools of this nature, and it suggests that you're in a very fiscally responsible place relative to your peer communities for a job like this. You asked about what would it look like in 5 years or 10 years or 15 years, and I guess the best I can say is look backwards at that curve since the high school was built. I can't tell you that curve will continue. I would be willing to bet it will not decline. And so that was one part of the question. What was the second part?
Building ages, the 49 years.
The building
average.
ages. So Lee can talk to this better than I can, but as I understand it, the Massachusetts School Building Authority asks the design team to design to a 50-year life cycle, right?
Yeah.
So if you look around the Commonwealth and you look back and you think about demographics and the baby boomers, there was a huge boom of school construction around the turn of the century and another huge boom around the 50s and 60s. And over the course of the decades since then, a lot of communities in the Commonwealth have put an addition on a building, thrown some modulars down, put a distinct building in place to deal with overpopulation. So your grade configurations have really been a driver, not of like an educational decision, but a facilities decision. And so when a community like Wilmington gets accepted by the School Building Authority under the name Wildwood, they're required by the state to receive that grant to explore all kinds of options, you know, not just the building that was accepted into the process, but is consolidation an option, and what are its benefits, and how would it fit into the educational vision of the entire community? And I thought Eric, Mr. Manager, did a really nice job of explaining how this project, solving 50% of the elementary school building needs, fits into a perspective that can potentially solve all of your elementary school needs in the course of maybe the next 8 or 9 years, versus one after the other, and stretch out 30 to 40 years. So I hope that answers your question. I'd be glad to talk after the meeting if you have more questions.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
Krista Zapka, Glen Road. One of the slides earlier on made reference to extended pre-K options, something along those lines. I was just wondering what would be offered for pre-K relative to what's currently offered. Would there still be a lottery system? And would the duration of pre-K be changing? What would the school offer?
Kate, do you want to speak to that?
Sure. One of the things that has come up in district repeatedly over the last, certainly since I've arrived here, is a desire with families to have a full day pre-K option. Based on our current facilities, we simply don't have the room to support that type of programming in the district. We just don't have enough classroom spaces. So this building is designed to house a similar model that we have now, the half-day sessions, as well as a full-day pre-K option for families that would be more in line with the traditional elementary school day that their siblings may also attend. It would remain under the same tuition-based lottery system, with the full-day program obviously being more expensive than the half-day program, but also trying to offer families a range of opportunities.
Thanks,
And
Kate.
yes, the lottery system would remain in place pending enrollment, obviously.
Thank you. Sure. Yes. Thank
No,
you for your
Pastor.
patience.
I'm Pastor. 2 more questions. Hi, Haley Stewart. I live at 126 Middlesex. I'm also the chair of the S Committee, so I stand very proudly in the very much for this program and this project, and I have deep gratitude for all the work that has been done here and how open y'all have been step after step after step, year after year, to be a community member that feels so connected and tied to this program. I think as a parent in town, and just as an adult in town, we have a responsibility to our kids for this work and for our next generation. But I also want to be really cognizant for the generation that has been here, and for many lifers who have been here for so long. So I'm curious. It might be a question for Eric, maybe someone else on the crew. But is there anything for those for a subset of folks who just simply cannot afford any sort of this increase? Is there anything that we can do as a town to help those folks to make sure that this does pass?
So that's a really good question. It's something that we've talked about, and we talked about it last fall when we were looking at the estimates from the preliminary estimates. My goal is to work with a team and figure out a way to have this project go in front of the town with the least possible impact. I mean, that's our goal, is to lessen the tax impact. There are different ways to do that we're exploring, and we're not really at the point right now to nail that down and get the exact impact. But we are committed to trying and do our best to reduce the tax impact of the project, hopefully to the point where, it won't be as unaffordable as something I think some folks may be worried that it was.
Thanks, Eric. Mr. DePalma, last question.
Thank you. Gary Palmer, 46 Wayne Road. To start out with, I'm 72 years old. I am not going to have any children in the school system. I promise you that. I am a senior. I am on a fixed income, being retired. I am concerned about the amount of money we're paying, but I will accept it. Because I'm not worried about today, because anyone in this room right now that has children in the school system, we know they're not going to get to that school. But what about the next generation? We have to educate properly. I disagree with the size of the gym. That's the only thing I've complained about on this whole project. But I understand it, and I understand what the school means. Being a person that has been into 2 new schools in my years in school, I know how important it is, and I know how you feel. As far as the name of the Wildwood School, who cares? Please. Let's be really realistic about this. I don't care what you call it, the dog pound. Who cares? It's a school for children. And that's what we have to be concentrating on. This gloom and doom that it's going to be $250 million, that's propaganda. We all know it. What we have to do is we have to educate everyone on what it's going to cost, and our town manager is doing that. No disrespect to anybody on this board. But our town manager has brought it forward on what it's going to cost, and he will be more than likely presenting solid figures at a later date. But I'm not, even though I know it's going to cost me more, it's not pushing me out of town. For what it's going to cost, stretched over a year, is not going to hurt me. Grant you, I won't be able to go to Aruba for 3 weeks every year. But I know the children are going to be educated. I know the teachers are going to have better facilities to be in. Look at the difference when we came to this high school. My daughter went to this high school. Terrific. Brand new school. Pride. Even little people have pride. These little kids have pride going to new school. Let's do it and let's get it over with. Maintenance over the years is going to be a lot cost efficient. Let's get it done. Let's stop the propaganda of $250 million school and it's going to run everyone out of town. Well, if it's going to run everyone out of town, don't build it because there's going to be no one in town to go to it. It's not going to happen. People will stay here, and they will stay here, and they will bring their grandchildren in, and their great-grandchildren, and they'll get them into the town. Whether it's moving, and it's happening all along, whether they're moving together or what. What is one of the most important things on a town? Education. Thank you.
Thank you. It is 7:30. We're going to bring this to a close. We're going to transition to the full building committee meeting. Thank you for those that are in attendance. The 7th forum will be planned for the summer, so stay tuned for that. We thank you for taking the time to join us tonight. This is recorded again, so for those that were not able to join, we will make sure that this link has been pushed out to everyone. Thank you again.